Hello, Commander.
Hello, my name is Ghost, and today I wanted to talk about Bannermen and how we are now 7 days away from basically the release date, which is currently scheduled at February 21st. And I just want to go over a few things to kind of talk about my thoughts about Bannermen and some of the different things that I think the developers should be aware of as we get very close to basically the release date. So what I want to do is basically just kind of go from the outside in, essentially just looking at the general overview of the game, and then kind of going more into the gameplay itself. We'll be starting off with just kind of like the general main screen and how the game basically looks. So the very first thing I kind of wanted to actually suggest was maybe even having like a in-game world chat. So essentially when you log into the game or you boot it up through Steam or however you can get to the game, there's an option that you can click to join, and then basically it'll open up a drop-down box or something like that, where you can basically just kind of talk to everyone else in the Bannerman community through the game. That way you don't need to go onto the Reddit, the Discord, Steam, the Steam forums, or anywhere else. You can actually just talk to everyone in-game through the game you want to play. When you go into the multiplayer option, like you actually click on multiplayer, and then you have the option of either putting in this like 55-digit pin to try and connect to a lobby. Why not just have like a general kind of lobby, search for lobby or open lobbies kind of option for people, so that way, you know, when you have like 5 or 6 people you want to play with, you don't have to send every single person a invitation or, you know, private message of the link. You can just kind of say, hey, here's the title of the lobby, come join in through there. Another thing I noticed was whenever you're actually going through your settings while you're in a lobby, if you ever back out of the settings while in the lobby, it'll actually kick you out of the lobby, which is a little bit tedious and kind of annoying, especially when, you know, if you're trying to set up a game or anything and you have 5 or 6 people and you're supposed to be hosting. If you leave, then the host leaves and now you have to kind of reset everything, it just gets a little bit annoying. Jumping now actually into the lobby itself, another thing that I would really like to see is an in-game lobby. This also kind of applies to an in-game chat, but just kind of a way that players can, you know, kind of interact and experience each other a little bit easier instead of just join a game and play the game. You know, that's fun and all, but kind of the reason I like to play video games as well as just enjoying the game, I like to meet people and kind of interact with those from all kinds of life. Another thing in the lobby that I would like to see is when you actually open up a game, you have the option of joining in as a teammate, or you can actually go in as a spectator, which is really cool because that means we actually have this wonderful thing called casting, which is really great because that means we can actually set up tournaments and stuff that people can experience either through the casters or from the replay analysis, which is great. But there isn't actually a stream overlay for the person that is the cameraman or the person that is commentating on the game, which is actually really important. Would really like to see either the like a custom overlay for the spectators, or just a way so that the person that's watching the game has like the player names, the resources, the supply of both, and then also removing the resources that the cameraman or the spectator has from the top right, because nothing's more annoying than having the entire game you have this little blip going off the top right of your screen saying, hey, by the way, you need to build some supply with the footmen or the workers you don't have. So, you know, it's just little things like that which could, at least in my opinion, really help the game kind of flesh itself out so that there's a lot of replayability to both the community and the players, so everyone can kind of learn and see the builds and strats of other people. A replay analysis, or like the ability to rewatch a game you just played, would also be really nice in the sense of like a competitive aspect if you're playing a ranked game, or just in a casual game, just so you can see kind of how other players kind of work their economy or interacted with each other. It'd just be really nice to have. So the last section is going to be a little bit more meat and bone, if you will, of this video, which is going to be the actual in-game part. And I keep looking down because I'm looking at all the notes I got here, but this is actually where, at least in my opinion, there's quite a few things that I think need to be worked on, if you will. The biggest thing that I want to talk about is obviously the in-game chat, as I previously mentioned, as well as the meta, the heroes, and the graphical issues that I would say that you have. So we'll start kind of with the easiest one, the graphical issues, which is, interestingly enough, if you're playing on a map like Salai, where you have that really big desert biome, if you have the highest graphical settings, the gamma is actually a lot lower, is the correct one, So it's a lot easier to actually see the map. But if you set the settings to medium or low, you'll actually get a much brighter screen, which, at least for me, when I'm playing at like 3 in the morning and it's super dark, my eyes sting playing that kind of map. The next thing I want to talk about is the heroes. So in the beta, we saw all 3 of the heroes that you could play. We saw the Lord Carthor, which was the giant, basically the Black Knight with the green sword, kind of walking around being a giant edgelord. You had Lady Vanya, who is kind of like the ranger, ranged class hero, which was a little bit, you know, more challenging kind of use compared to Carthor, which was a bit more of like a easy to learn, easy to play kind of hero. And then we have the Paladin, who, to be honest with you, I don't even remember his name, because that's how little I saw him, little I wanted to play him, and how easy it was to play Lord Carthor. Each player had their own kind of CC, or crowd control. Lord Carthor had that giant screech, which kind of basically annihilated archers and had everyone run around in a very large area, The Ranger, or Lady Vanya, had that multi-shot, which basically did the same thing. It would stun about 5 to 6 units if they were all bunched up enough, which was quite nice. Allowed players to, or at least allowed Lady Vanya players to kind of control the battlefield a little bit easier. And then the Paladin had basically a reverse Arthur, where he would stick his sword into the ground and then do this giant shockwave, which also did a lot of damage and also did a lot of CC. I don't really know where they're going with the heroes, to be honest with you. They feel like they're supposed to be these end-all units, but some are significantly easier to play compared to others, and I say this in the sense that you'll see a lot of Lord Carthors just because of how easy it is to play him. Just at the same time, you'll see some Lady Vanya players because she's a little bit more of a difficult player or hero to use, but it's always a lot easier just to play a character that you can just walk up and then do the screech and then watch as, you know, the enemy units just kind of flock away from you. The Paladin, I don't know what to say about him, you know? He didn't really have anything compared to the other 2 heroes that really made him stand out. I don't know if they're trying to go for like a rock, paper, scissors sort of thing with them, where Lady Vanya counters the Carthor, and Carthor counters the Paladin, and the Paladin counters Lady Vanya, or if it's supposed to be more like they all have their own unique and interesting properties, which allows you to kind of build and you know, create your army tailored to that hero. It just kind of felt like the only time that you would get a hero is because you have to have a hero more than you would really need a hero. So like, for example, if you remove the heroes from the game, would the meta change? No, because it's still just mass footmen. The only difference is how you as a player want to address the mass footmen. So doesn't really matter in the sense of how the battle is actually being handled. It's always going to be mass footmen. It's always going to be, you know, your footmen versus their footmen, and it's just kind of which Lord Carthor is going to screech first. The next thing I wanted to talk about was actually the movement animations and how kind of the units move and interact with the world. I noticed that a lot of times the footmen, when they move, they're very static. They're static in motion, which means like they're not really doing a whole lot. You'll see the archers, they'll kind of run with their like bows and they'll kind of sway a little, but you don't see them like when they're standing around. They're not like leaning back, they're like looking around, you know, they're just waiting. They're just waiting. They're kind of like chess pieces on a chessboard. They just stand still. They're very rigid. You might see them kind of move a little bit, but it's very minor in comparison to other games where, you know, if you look at the footmen, for example, from Warcraft 3, right? Those guys would be just flailing about when they're trying to move around, but it makes them look more, they're more fluid, they're moving, they're interacting. When they swing a sword, it's this massive swipe, you know, and during the combat, you'll see that there is a lot of movement, but when it comes to, like, for example, when you look at the knight, you know, you've got this dude holding this giant heavy hammer like this, and he just kind of waddles towards your opponent and then just does this like wood chopping motion and then just resets to here. I don't know about you, but if I had to, you know, carry a giant hammer and I wasn't moving, I'd want to have it resting on my shoulder, you know, just kind of letting it relax on my shoulder instead of having to constantly balance it here. So it's little things like that which make the characters, or at least the units, feel a little bit just less human. They feel more like, you know, like the mobs in League of Legends, any game where it just naturally spawns units. They go out, they'll do the attack thing, but they're probably going to just die in a couple seconds after you've like last hit them. That's how the units feel in this game right now. It's just, they're not they're not human. They don't feel or interact with the rest of the world the way that you would think normal people would. So it's just a little bit jarring. Real quick, this is just one thing that I happened to notice. Gathering base. In a game, you have a command center, you have a gathering post, you have a hunter's lodge, you have not a gathering base. You know, you could have a base, you could have a gathering post, not a gathering base. Please, it's such a jarring word. It's a very small and just kind of nitpicky thing that I'm just complaining about because I'm going through this whole thing, but I feel like we could change that name to something a little bit more creative. Town Hall, a Hero's Keep. I mean, the Hero's Throne, that's a pretty cool name for a thing that spawns your hero. Gathering Base. You know, it's just, I don't know, it just doesn't have that sort of power to it. We've talked about the kind of the game, inside the game itself. Let's just talk about the meta, and when I mean the meta, I just mean basically the Bannermen current meta is to mass footmen, get blood rush, and then just try and chase down your opponent, or snowball the game in your favor so that you can win the game. I already know, just from talking to a bunch of the other devs, that they're already working on trying to fix the game so that it's not nearly as mass footmen, win the snowball engagement and then you're done. I know that they're already in the process, but I thought I'd just bring this up anyways. There needs to be something done. Currently, looking at our numbers here, we have archers at a movement speed of 336 and footmen at 460. You know, it makes sense why footmen would counter archers. But at the same time, I feel like it shouldn't be like that. You know, I feel like if you really wanted to make it so that you know the game naturally incentivizes players to do certain things, because that's really what it comes down to. The meta is basically how the game can be most efficiently played, or how the developers have incentivized players to play in a certain way. So for example, if we had archers at the movement speed of 460, footmen are only at 336, and even when they have blood rush, they can only get to a movement speed of about 400, you're going to see a very heavy archer gameplay because you have the range of archers, footmen won't be able to catch up, and you know that you can easily micro away from your opponent, so it just makes sense. Right now, the way it is, you don't want to build archers because they're going to just get cleaned by footmen, and also, by the way, Carther's Screech does, I think it's like 75 damage to archers, which when they only have like 110 health, you know, why bother, essentially? When you see things like that, obviously I think that there needs to be some sort of incentive to try and get the advanced units, and we're also going to talk about the hero leveling and how crazy it is that your ultimate is at level 3. We'll get to that in a second, but I do think that there needs to be some way that the developers incentivize later gameplay, or at least different strategies in terms of, well, if I do a fast expand into a hard tower defense, that way I'll be ahead of my opponent, so that way I'll have a stronger economy in the mid game, but essentially I'm casting the die in the sense of, can they kill me in the early game when I'm just building my gathering base? One last thing before we jump into the meta of the game, essentially just for gameplay. I also wanted to talk about how the resources are currently placed. So the gold mine and the woodcutter's lodge, they kind of just feel like placeholders. They both pretty much look indistinguishable between the two, at least when I'm just clicking and I'm sending my units. And also having a giant counter at the top, it does help for newer players, but it's kind of just, it's a little bit easy, you know what I mean? But having that nice little like tick down bar that tells me how much gold I have left, if I really wanted to know, I could always just click on it, you know, and just that would tell me how much I have left. Same thing for both gold and lumber. And then once they've mined out, also, please, I don't want this giant big red X above the mines. Just blow them up or delete them, you know? It's such an eyesore compared to the rest of the game, where you have these nice big medieval clashes, and then you have this like giant comic book Sam's like X across your gold mine. It's just kind of, it just kind of detracts you from the game. On top of the Bannermen meta, one more thing that I wanted to address, and then we'll kind of wrap it all up, if you will, is the current hero balancing. So, as we previously mentioned, Lord Carthor, or the Black Knight, is, at least in my opinion, the easiest hero to use and the easiest hero to learn, just because you get a life steal, you get a wind walk, or basically a way to shadow walk out of Lady Vanya's Q, so basically you can ignore CC from the hero. And you also get a very nice Screech, which if your opponent is playing archers, you can basically destroy their entire army with one click. When you have their ultimate at level 3, you're going to, again, as I previously mentioned, you're going to incentivize a very early and aggressive playstyle, because level 3 heroes, it doesn't take that much to get. That's basically about 2 creep camps, and once you have that, it's go time. You go and you kill them. I don't think that that's how you want to have an average game. You know, most games, I think, went from about 6 to 10 minutes. I feel like that really doesn't give you that opportunity to really, you know, see how the two sides clash. Maybe a 15 to 20 minute game, so maybe having the ultimates at level 5 instead of level 3, allowing players to maybe even pick which abilities they have and which abilities they can you know, flesh out more. So for example, if a player wanted to have a stronger wind walk so that they can try and chase down wounded heroes, it'd be nice to have. Or a life steal that you know, drains your opponent's health or a unit's health because it's a level 3 lifesteal or something. That'd be it'd just be interesting to have a more dynamic hero like skill set essentially. Lady Vanya, as we kind of talked about before, she, at least in my opinion, you'll see some people pick her because it's a way to counter Lord Carthor, especially with the Q and then the CC chain. But that's a very difficult thing to pull off, and again, it's a lot easier to just pick the Screech and win essentially. And then the Paladin, who Lady or Lord Baron Heisenberger, I don't know, you know. His abilities are nice, it's good to have him, but the Lord Carthor Screech mixed with the Footman, it's just easier to play, you know. I think I played the Paladin maybe once or twice in some of my casual games, but he's just so forgettable compared to the other two. So that's pretty much it for me, guys. One quick little thing, we will have a best of 5 or a best of 3 or 5 release tomorrow, so make sure you take a look at that. I'll be releasing it. It'll be in the Discord, and it'll also be in the Reddit as well, so please take a look at that. Helps me kind of get the word out. And then, of course, if you have any additional thoughts that you want to talk about, please let me know in the comments down below, or reach out in the Discord and just kind of, you can reach me out, or you can talk in the questions and suggestions, and we can have a nice, lively, and hopefully constructive discussion about how you guys think the Bannermen game should be created and developed, or if you guys have any suggestions you want to bring to the devs. So with that, thank you to everyone that was here for this video. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, evening, afternoon, or night, or morning, wherever you live. Hope to talk to you guys soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.